Hey, welcome to Hoy Dimelo Cinema Club. Hola, audiencia. Y bienvenidos, bienvenida. Hoy Dimelo Cinema Club. I'm tonight's host, Jason Echoes. I am joined by my co-host, El Don Dino, to my left here. A good man, a good mate, Isaac. Steve Dez, Michaela Booth, and JP Cerunos. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing THX 1138, starring Robert, what's his name?
Duvall.
Duvall. I don't know why I just brain farted that. Robert Duvall, directed by George Lucas, produced by Francis Ford Coppola. This movie was picked because it was in our line of conjunction with The Godfather, which we reviewed last week. Robert Duvall is also in that. He plays Tommy. So let's jump right into it. This movie came out in the 70s, and there's at least two versions of it. I believe we all watched the same version, the 70s version, and there was a 2004 version with apparently some updates by George Lucas. So I'd like to know which version you watched and your first impressions. JP, let's start with you, if you don't mind. There it is.
We saw the 2004 one. Yay. That unfortunately, that's the bad thing about. Are we into initial thoughts now? Like,
yeah, go right into your first impression, my man.
Well, my first impression, unfortunately, I got heavy special edition vibes because the first 7 minutes is probably the most re-edited parts of the movie. Thankfully, there's not a lot of re-edits. From my understanding of, for at least what I saw the movie, there wasn't a lot of re-edits. There weren't a lot of, dusting, CGI dusting and pasting or whatever. But there was enough of it where it did get annoying when it showed up. But
this was not your first time watching this movie?
No, this is my first time. So the way I was introduced to this film is this. But I've seen clips and bits of this film in the past, and also it's the short that was made before it that was based upon through a lot of like Star Wars documentaries. Whenever they talk about George Lucas, they talk about THX, and they also talk about American Graffiti. But to be quite honest, this is the first time that I've seen it. First time that I had no idea what this film was going to be about, and it's a slow ride, a very, very slow ride, and it's weird because I get it. Yeah, there's a few things in the film because I really hated the dialogue in this movie, but that's because the way that they set up the world, it's somewhat expected, the type of language and whatever that they kind of went with the character wise. The film doesn't really leave a lot. There's a lot of world, but not a lot of world building. It gives them the audience, to figure out on their own or fill in the blanks on their own, like what happened, why is this utopia like this or whatever. But it was slow. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a fan. I'm sure if I was a smarter person, I would get the movie more. But to be quite honest, it wasn't for me. We'll probably get more into detail about it. But yeah, for me, it was a very long meh. So with some beautiful moments, but it was just a very long meh.
Well, thanks, JP. What about let's crisscross over to you, Steve?
My first impressions. The first time, this is my first time watching the movie, by the way. And the moment I watched it, I was like, "Wow, this is the reason why I don't apply to work in Amazon." They're gonna treat people this way, like, hello, this is not the instructional training video I want to see to get in. Like, no.
I agree. You had some real Amazon vibes in there for sure.
yeah, I was like, they make you look like Jeff Bezos. Like everybody has to look this way. They pick your part. Like I don't.
Good point, man. Good point.
How long have you been waiting to drop that Jeff Bezos? How many Jeff Bezos jokes are you going to be using tonight?
We'll see, man. I thought JP was gonna get ahead of me, but
oh my God, they're beating him up right now.
Anyway, go on.
The package is gonna arrive when it arrives. Leave him alone.
all right. So I just muted JP. My first impressions. First time seeing this movie. I was like, okay, I'm along for the ride. It's a little interstellar, a little I guess the beginning of the world of what Star Wars was gonna look like or something. And so I can definitely see that influence. I was confused in many ways, so I'm glad that we are discussing this. It had a little bit of They Live in it, I guess. You can say. Yeah, it's an interesting movie. Interesting movie. Would have definitely would have never crossed my radar if you wouldn't have recommended it. So that's my initial thoughts.
Very cool. Why don't we stay here with Dino? Dino, can you give us some first impressions?
Yes. Actually, I had seen the movie once before, and there was a lot that I didn't remember because I think when we were watching, I told you I was like, "Oh man, I haven't watched this movie since I was in Paraguay, which is pre-2003." So I watched an older version of the film, and there's things, that's why certain CGI moments I was like, "Oh, that looks terrible." The quick question: did you guys have Buck Rogers preview at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
The small Buck Rogers intro.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't remember that from the first time I watched it. I mean, when I watched it, certain things really got ingrained into my mind, right? Like everyone bald, the whiteness, the contrast, and just like them all beating up on him at times, and clearly they're trying to escape and they had sex and they're not supposed to have sex. That's all the stuff I remember, right? Like, ooh, boobies, right? Because clearly I saw this before 2003, so I was a wee bit younger back then. So yeah, but there's some stuff I really enjoyed. I think the aesthetic and kind of the idea of what what's going on and the messaging, especially watching it now, like the sedative and all that, like your medicine cabinet talking to you. I'm like my Apple Watch keeps telling me like breathe and like are you feeling good? Stand up. Like we're in that mode already. We're in that mode where we have all these different more and more we're just disconnecting with actual human touch and interacting with cameras and screens. So watching it this time, I was definitely getting those vibes of like, oh boy, oh brother. So yeah, oh brother for sure, big brother.
Okay, cool first take. Hey Isaac, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool, man. What was your first impression of the movie, or was this your first time seeing the movie, and what did you think?
Well, it's the second time I saw it. The first time my reaction was much like JP's. I just thought it was so slow. It was hard to like get invested. But when I saw that this was the movie we were going to watch this week, it was completely different. I was completely immersed in like it was like almost like a hypnotic reaction to like all the visuals and the music, and like it's slow, but it was really engaging this time around. And I saw all the like social political aspects and how it's just like relating to what we're seeing in the news today, and the technology like Dino had mentioned. Like I saw like him vegetating just watching all these holograms, almost like what I do with Instagram. But like visually, it speaks volume, and it says so much that it's a genre that I had always loved, but now I'm appreciating it more, opposed to like the Scorsese, a lot of dialogue, Tarantino. Like it's just as powerful, but just in a different way, more visual. So that was my first reaction this time around.
I will say something about the dialogue. It's repetitive and it works, but it is co-written by George Lucas, so it's not like amazing dialogue. We don't try and be like Tarantino and Scorsese dialogue is
No,
like less than what George Lucas writes as dialogue. I don't like that.
What I meant was like visually, like his visuals are like what Tarantino's dialogue, but it's what he did visually.
Got it. No, I get it. I get it. I'm just
right, but the dialogue is pretty bad because it's George Lucas. I mean,
well, I feel like we all universally agree about George Lucas's dialogue writing. We're good and great. That's good with the talking.
I think it's up to you now. Huh?
No. We're gonna shoot over to Michaela. Michaela B.
Yeah, sorry.
Michaela, was this your first time watching the movie, and what did you think?
It has. This was my first time watching. It's definitely an early 70s, late 60s sci-fi movie. You know, it's like because you kind of see this trend in film during these years where they're trying to make science fiction less of like a hooky, like Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon sort of thing to more like Dune and all of that. And if you even look at the literature, which George Lucas would have been reading at the time, like this was like peak Philip K. Dick years. Just pointing that out. And like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was I think it came out 70 or like late 60s. So, and also Ursula Le Guin's stuff came out, and so it's just very interesting to see like the parallels of how cultural themes branch across mediums. Even though it was really cool to see that George Lucas genuinely has an aesthetic. You know, I always thought that like that Star Wars-y look was something that was specific, like that kind of came out of nowhere because of like needs must. I didn't like actually realize that it was 100% like the way George sees science fiction, which was kind of fun. And it makes me kind of want to watch American Graffiti again to see like the way he sets up shots. So that's my initial thought.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with everything you said, and actually I agree with almost everything that everybody said. I think you guys have really nailed this one in your viewings of it.
All right, good night.
Good. So this was my first time watching the movie. I thought it was pretty good, man. Like I didn't know what I was really getting into, so I just kind of like laid back. I didn't expect action or drama or anything. Like I don't know. But I knew it was science fiction, and I was along for the ride. And when I figured out real early on that this is some kind of weird dystopia, I was like locked in because that's like my aesthetic right now. I just love this weird dystopian ideology that's like been going around the last 4 or 5 years, and I can't get enough of the stuff. And I didn't even know this movie. I knew it existed. I would see the advertisement for it. I might have had it as a special featurette on another DVD or something, the short film maybe. But I gotta say, man, for the 1970s, this movie was beautiful. It really is. I mean, these all white rooms and everything being so sterile. I just kept thinking like this thing is really institutionalized, and everyone is like maybe in a mental hospital even, you know, because and then everybody's taking the pills every morning and they're being, you know, probably sedated or whatever is happening, maybe infertile or whatever, and they're using their. I mean, there's so many things you can gather just from watching in this movie. There's a lot of stuff going on, man. And there's a lot of stuff that are paralleled even with our future that we are living in currently, our present. There are some weird parallels that like, wow, that's really some forward thinking. That's what's happening. But good, like they say, good science fiction is rooted in good science. So this is one of those movies that, you know, they didn't like just throw paint against the wall to see was stuck. Lucas and the other co-writer, they were very thoughtful in this attempt to make a movie about a dystopia future. You know, and also assuming we don't even know the full story because we know what happens at the very end of the movie. Like there's something else going on, you know? And I sort of love that they never quite tell us what's going on, what has happened. It's just this is a self-contained story in a universe that's much bigger. We don't know what it is. We just sort of feel like the writers kind of have an idea what it is, or they leave it open-ended where they could have written more.
I'm so glad he left it open-ended. It's like watching it now again, and I was like, and clearly, you know, they touched it up. There are 3 versions of the movie apparently. There's a theatrical release. There's the George Lucas, let me add a little CGI, and then there's a Blu-ray version that has something or other, maybe even a little bit more extra. But yeah, watching it this time, I was like, "Oh, George."
I honestly could have used more story to be
Right,
honest.
right, right. But I was just
enjoyed
thinking that he was gonna like version 5 and like add another, you know, like him just like. But I thought it was like a great ending, and just like it lets everyone just.
So you see a lot of the parallels between this movie and Star Wars, and I'm glad Michaela brought that up because I was actually going to bring that up. Just out of curiosity, you guys, permission to speak freely. Why don't you guys tell me some similarities you may have seen to some of his other works in this very early young George Lucas attempt?
Well, let's start with R2D2. I mean, not R2D2. What's the C3PO?
C3PO.
Okay.
Yeah. They're building C3PO.
They're building CP3O in the movie?
C3PO. Yeah, that's what he's building. Yeah. And then just like the robots, right, that are going, that are like human sized.
Oh, I guess I didn't peep that he was building C3.
Yeah, so like the work that Duvall, THX, it's actually a head that, and like in other shots you kind of see that it's like a robot body, and he's working in the head part, and for whatever reason they have vials of nuclear vials that
Like The Simpsons.
Yeah, he's putting in the.
So, are we to assume that this is in the Star Wars universe?
No, this is 100% an aesthetic thing. Like, it's like one of those things like where certain artists kind of are just like, I like the way that this looks, and they might not even notice it. You know, especially since this was like his first actual feature film.
Yeah.
Because he made this 5 years after he graduated from USC.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
so
I think like Michaela said, I think it's an aesthetic thing that is like when you see a Tim Burton movie, it's like, oh, that's Tim Burton's aesthetic. So when you see a George Lucas movie, it's like, oh, that's George Lucas thing.
Yeah, well, you had even said, and this is where we were.
Even the way he has the control room set up, like, don't tell me that that's not Death Star.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it's just like you can definitely see that in his brain being like, if I set it up like this, it looks good.
It was also like, this is gonna sound weird, but like this is in regards to the cut that we saw, which was one of the specialized ones. In a lot of the special edition Star Wars ones, the things that he likes to add is a lot of weird pan shots. And the new shots, almost all of them, were pans of these very CGI-looking backgrounds and very obvious composited, extras from a green screen onto these backgrounds. And that's obviously his style, because I felt heavy special edition vibes from that. It's like, okay, George has hard rocks for this sort of thing. Got you. But the older stuff was, I liked the fact that the holograms actually looked like the holograms from Star Wars. I wasn't expecting that. And even the fucking jerk-off machine, it looks so ugly and
Can we just go ahead and address that, JP? Just jump right into the jerk-off machine, would you?
It looks so like in the original in Star Wars: A New Hope, the original Star Wars. So many of the droids and machines were very practical, janky looking things. Like, you could tell someone made this in the garage, And that jerk-off machine looked exactly like that. Like someone made this in the garage, and now Robert Duvall is just getting a handy from this fucking machine.
A handy?
So actually, if you watch Star Wars, you can see the jerk-off machine in the corner of the cantina.
Ah, right.
You know what?
They recycle.
Like a
I
retired
don't think moisture farms are.
I want to say like I wouldn't doubt it. Or like in the Ewoks, no, not the Ewoks, the what are the little creatures called on Tatooine? The Jawas on their big old tanker. They probably have one of those. They were trying to sell to Uncle Owen. You know.
All right. The other Star Wars, I think, connection would be the sound. You pointed it out, and that's what I'm not sure. We weren't sure if it was like if he tweaked the sounds when they went back and re-edited in like 04 or whatever, or if even back when it came out in 71, if it was because even the poles that the long poles the robots had when Jason pointed out they're like almost lightsaber sounds.
Hey,
right?
if we're gonna talk about sounds, I have to address it. So there was a scene. I don't remember which scene it was. Maybe it was when they were running away or something. But there was a scene where all I heard in the background were fart sounds, and I don't know if that you guys caught that, but I was just like, "What is this?"
Can you make the sound? Which kind of fart? There's so many different types of farts.
I know what Des is talking about, oddly enough, and I don't remember the scene either because I felt like that was so out of place. It's the type of fart sound that sounds like two like rubber materials, like let's say if like rubber duckies just squeezing each other.
It was, you know why? It was in that scene that he was running away because I remember also hearing the
That's the second part of the film is him running away.
No, but I'm talking about the one that the one that he escapes from the prison thing or whatever. And
I think it's the robot guys because they had to walk and they probably were.
The robot guys were like clap, 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 and then like his sounds were like squeaky, but in the background they had like a music sound. It was like a soundtrack of fart sounds.
I guess I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
We must have had the silent fart.
Yeah, I don't think I caught it either. JP, Michaela, you guys caught
it,
right?
Maybe he added it. He went like, you know.
I thought it was.
Isaac, did you hear farts?
Because I kind of vaguely know what Des is talking about, but I can't remember the scene either.
For all the people watching, comment below if you guys heard fart sounds when they are running away.
Okay,
we'll wait.
So there was something else I wanted to ask. Oh, with the sounds. So Dino mentioned that the little lifesaver kind of sound whenever they stuck the people with the prodding little pole or whatever. And he brought up a good point. He goes, maybe he always wanted a lifesaver, but he didn't have the technology to make it happen in this particular movie. And so that's probably a good thing. There was also one of the songs that they were playing kind of had like a lightsabery sound in the music. I don't know if you guys caught that. Yeah. I think were those the only sounds that we noticed from like the Star Wars vibe?
No, then when he's like driving in the car and you know,
yeah,
there are a few other, and that's where I'm not sure if it's stuff that was added. You know, it's not even we'll add it in post. It's like we'll add it in 20 years from now. It's, that's George Lucas. Oh, don't worry, we add it in post 2020.
So this movie deals with some very human themes also, outside of like just the straight-on technology dystopia. What did you guys pick up from those human relationships and the acting that happened in the movie? Isaac, why don't we start with you because you're so quiet.
Oh my God.
Okay. Well, it's funny you mentioned the acting. I thought that the acting was really real and raw, especially with the background characters. What was the question? I'm sorry.
The question was what did you think of the acting, and also what did you think of the relationships in the
Oh,
movie? Like, because I mean, we talked a lot about this being a sci-fi thing, and all those elements to it. But what about the actual story, the narrative of the human beings involved?
yeah. It's almost like I think that each character represented something within the themes. Like what was it? Pleasence, that actor, he kind of carried the philosophical weight. And I thought he did a pretty good job. He wasn't like it's really easy for them to ham it up and just it's like he personalized it. I think all the actors did, and the relationship between Robert Duvall's character and the female the actress, I thought that was done in a pretty good way. I thought maybe there should have been more to develop there, but for the most part, I mean, with these characters, it's almost like that's all they really had to work with in that setting because they were drugged up, right? And kind of like forced to be in that situation. But for the most part, I thought it was pretty real. I actually enjoyed those parts. Yeah, that's
Cool. Anybody else want to jump in there and talk about some of the relationships?
Oh, we're forgetting one. This is major spoiler. The sunset.
Hmm?
What are you talking about?
I mean, I think that speaks for
The Star
itself,
Wars,
though.
right?
Like,
Oh,
well, yes, that's
Oh.
definitely Lucas aesthetics 101 there. But like, I
There's
find
only
it
one
so
son.
poke you. I'll poke you. No, I think it's always really, really funny when people like are like that a lot. Like you guys didn't get what happened because like I think it was very clear that they were kind of indicating that it was a nuclear wasteland and everyone went underground.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to protect people from going up from.
Which is crazy because in the ground they're dealing with radiation every fucking day.
Well,
And the movie starts with a fucking malfunction that kills like a dozen or so people.
Well,
No
it
one
was a
important to
huge-
the story.
it was a
but
huge fear at the time
Yeah.
too, because like that's when like
Yeah.
we as a country were like, I'm pretty sure that's just about the time when like that was like a big argument was whether or not we should have nuclear plants.
yeah, we were still in the Cold War.
Well, that too, but like on top of that, that was something that they were exploring. Like
so
that
you think
was our version.
everything above ground was like a nuclear fallout situation?
It had been.
100%.
It had been.
Wait, how do we know that?
I feel like that's just assumed you're underground and part of they want you to follow orders, so and kind of
But wouldn't like if you would have thought that the whole movie, wouldn't it be like a Planet of the Apes thing? Because at the end he goes above ground and he stays there for the whole credit roll.
Well, that's why they're showing nothing but orange. Because compared
Right.
to the other color schemes in the movie, like you don't
Quite
see anything
interesting.
as like dangerously deserty. Like you don't see that many warm tones.
and the whole time it's like, how do you get out? How do you get out? And they even talk about the characters that were being played by little people, and they live on the outer side, is what they even said at that moment, right? They live on the cusp or the whatever, and then he
Or like
crashes through like the final kind of border, So it's totally like, it's safe here, don't go out. It's safe here, don't go out. That was the message, right?
And
Which
that
is
was
also, I think, part of Plato's The Cave, right? The whole idea of like just focus on the shadows that is coming from the fire and not the outside. Stay in the cave and just look at the reflections. Because even the whoever they were praying to, which is kind of like they live as well, right? Like they stumble onto that one, video that's recording a poster of that face. So it's like this weird kind of,
Well, that's supposed to be that. I think that the religion thing too is like also to tell us that this is Earth, because that's clearly Jesus, and they're clearly doing Catholicism of like some bastardized form.
Yeah.
So I think that's like another thing that's supposed to ground us. And it was such a huge theme at the time, you know, for science fiction, was this whole idea of like, what if we actually pushed the buttons? What would that world look like? How would we survive? And like everyone was thinking underground bunkers anyways, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That all kind of checks out. That's really interesting. So the woman, the woman in the movie,
Her name is
La. Yeah. Luh.
it's just love.
Yeah.
Well, Luh and like 3 letters, but I mean 3 numbers, but who cares?
Oh, okay. Well, La, she kind of like orchestrates this thing, doesn't she? Because she starts changing his medication,
Yeah.
and then he starts to like wake up. That's pretty much what's happening, right? Like,
Yeah.
so she's already awoke. She woke.
Yeah.
And she brings him along on the journey. And then what happens to her though?
She gives birth and gets is no more.
She gave birth. There was no more.
Yeah. There was an embryo and she was gone. They took the embryo out of her.
Oh, and then she was out of there.
Yep. That's it. Later on, you know, because he keeps looking and the hologram, the black dude, he like finds it on the computer and is like, "Where is she? Where is she?" And they like zoom in and the lettering is on that embryo in the she has given birth. So
Interesting. Does anybody else have any ideas about the relationships in this movie and things you might have noticed or saw?
What I found very interesting about this specific dystopia is it wasn't a secret that they were being sedated. You know, it wasn't like some big revelation. Like, it was literally just like, no, like, I need to get through my shift, and the way that I do that is if I take my medication. I can't do it without. Like, he actually says something like that in the film.
yeah.
You know? Like, and like, they're aware that it's a law that you have to, you know, like, it's not like some huge conspiracy. It's something that everyone as a society agreed to do, which is something I found very interesting.
Yeah. You said it wasn't a law.
Well,
No,
I mean, just everyone accepted it, right?
Oh, right.
It wasn't it wasn't like the government or whoever was in charge tricking you into taking sedatives because they
weren't
just,
like putting it in the meat.
Yeah.
Out in the open.
If anything,
They
yeah,
knew, like-
they had warnings, right? Like if you took too many of them,
Mm-hmm.
because that's another thing that says, like, oh, too many of this, and it might screw you up a little bit through that weird medicine cabinet recording. As it kept tracking every time they took the medicine.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't something that, like, it's not like, oh my gosh, the vitamins that, you know, like, they don't have that scene where like they realize what it really is. No, they're just like, no, this is
you said
you
it.
have to.
You said during the watch it wasn't like Soylent Green.
No,
Like, oh no, Soylent Green is people. It's like oh no, the medicine is fucking our brains.
no,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
well, like, it wasn't even that. It wasn't even like like, we don't even know what this really is. Like, they're straight up like, no, this is how we function.
right.
And if you don't have this, you're not going to function properly. You know?
Whereas I think in The Giver, they take also vitamins, but that's actually sedatives as well. Am I not mistaken?
Exactly. Well, like,
Yeah.
it's like such a common trope throughout a lot of these dystopian worlds. And like, and like, that's why I find it so interesting that it's like so, like, it's something that's so accepted, because like every other thing I've ever seen or read is always just like, but wait, this huge thing is happening. This is a huge conspiracy. Like, the people are part of the conspiracy, which you don't see.
So the interesting, geesh, my God. The interesting thing about like the sedatives, which I've noticed kind of, I bring up The Giver again because I've been seeing it lately in different talks, and I think we talked about it at some point. But these sedatives, a lot of them are to do with sexual impulses. Right? Like, that to me is very interesting, that's where even back in I guess the 60s, right? Because it was after the the summer of love, right? If you think about it. So I guess maybe that's why that makes sense. That they're like, all right, we had way too much, open love in the summer of love and all that. It's time to repress, those emotions, and it's kind of since been that way.
Well, I also think that's a big product of what was going on culturally too. Because, think about, because this is around the time the far right found what their voice was. I've been reading a lot of stuff about Jimmy Carter, so forgive me. But, during that whole era, that's, when Ronald Reagan was first getting into politics, which was, a big deal because he was considered this crazy radical, and that was, a big platform for them was, anti-porn. So I feel like that would be something that, liberals or, free thinkers in general would grab onto and be like, see, no, the government wants to inhibit this. So I think that just plays into the time, the time it was made.
Yeah. We'll see that.
Yeah, for sure. I hadn't considered really any of those things while I was watching the movie, so that's a pretty good take. What are some characters you guys identify with, or you guys who would you have been in this world?
I know who JP would be.
I'm interested to who you guys identify with, or thought was a weird character, or who had an interesting story.
I want to hear Dino. I feel like Dino's either gonna say the jerk off robot or Sen.
Sen.
Yeah, I figured.
JP has huge Sen vibes.
It was funny because I hated relating to that character because out of all I did feel that, especially once once they finally get out of the void, he ends up being left behind and he just accepts it. Oh, I guess I'm just stuck in this fucking what's outside where I live and exploring the subway, trying to talk to the children, and he himself has his own journey of putting the dots together as well. And we don't get to find out what happens to him either.
Well, I think Sen's an interesting character too, in a way, because he's clearly what's supposed to be the radical thought. But when it comes to actual radical action, he's terrified.
Yeah,
he's 100% all talk.
He has to wait until someone gives him permission to do so. And then even when he finds out that THX, when he said I'm going to fucking go out into the void, and he commits to it, and then Sen realizes, oh shit, he's actually really committing to it. He has second thoughts. He's yeah, let's go back. Let's go back.
Yeah, no, the whole I can't see them anymore.
Right?
We're not. I don't feel brave anymore.
And I'll admit, I've had scenarios just like that. I remember my first time being in LA, the moment where I decided to explore the town. The moment that I could no longer see where my university was, where my school was, the moment I was is this too far?
Are you my mommy?
And instead of tossing the kid sedatives, Pat, he straight up not he commiserates about what it was like when he was a kid, how they didn't get to run around these newfangled IV machines, and he plugs the kid back in despite everything he was saying.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably I brought this up also I think yesterday. He's like Joey Pence in the Matrix, right? He was somewhat of a radical, wanted to get out, kind of got out, or in this case, got to the edge of it, saw some bugs, because that was the other thing. They didn't want any sort of connection with the outside world. So any bugs, any animals, anything that could be contaminated, that was a big thing, right? That's what in different cultures and all that. That's why they shaved, right? Because it's it's more, it's sanitary. It's less chance of dirt and all the other shit. But anyway, so he got to the end of the metro or whatever, and kind of stumbled through, saw a bug, and was like, "I'm out." And then he's like, "You know what? Can you put me back in? I don't want out. I'm good. I'm good. I'm a good little. I'm a good sheeple. If you want me, I'll play ball again.
It's
Please
so
put me
weird
back.
because one of the things that I saw when right before he heads back, I got kind of mad while watching the movie because he sees while he's exploring a puddle and mud, and that's the first time that we get to see anything that's nature, because that's literal earth. Like everything we've seen so far is just these concrete walls, plain white walls, and just everything that's metal, man-made. And then he finally sees actual, besides people, nature and earth. And then his first thing to do, after being also spooked by the robots and the little creatures, is to just go back. And that upset me because I was like, wait, that should be a moment. Like, that's the first thing that we see that's not man-made, and then you just run away from it.
Wait, yeah. I mean, you do that with raccoons.
Shut up.
You guys all seem to like kind of be gravitating toward Sin as a pretty interesting character, and I would agree with you guys. I kept wondering while we were watching this movie, like, where do I know this guy from? He's from something. Do you guys know Sin is Dr. Loomis in Halloween?
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, I've only seen that movie once.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's him. That's a younger Dr. Loomis. Like, I just...
Well, that still looked old.
And still, yeah, I don't have no clue how old he was in this movie. It's impossible to tell. He could have been 30, he could have been 55, 60.
So real quick, I really connected, or I don't know if connected. The character that got me was the old dude, because he was the only old one there, right? But then I went down the rabbit hole of IMDb, and he was like born in 1895 or whatever, or 1890.
Yeah.
And he ended up being in like 304. He has 304 acting credits.
And he's still alive?
Yeah.
No, he's dead for sure now. He
died at 95. He was 95 years old, and his last film was was the Dick Tracy movie. And you've probably recognized him if you've seen him in a few things here and there. But yeah, I thought he was interesting because he had like the hairiest eyebrows also compared to everyone else, and he was just kind of like matter-of-factly type of thing. And that, I guess, leads me to a question, if you don't mind. What was the void? Was that like purgatory? Was that jail? Because they were just able to roam around there at some point. And
any fresh ideas on that?
So the void, and then the black dude, and he said he's a what's
a hologram.
Yeah, he said he's a hologram. I guess what do you think of that and the meaning of the void, I guess, and of the hologram?
What do you
think?
You guys have been so quiet over there.
The moment I saw the black guy, I was like, well, thank God there's a black guy there. And
finally, there's a black guy in the world.
Yeah, and then he said he's a hologram. I was like, clearly Tupac. Like, he already said it. He's black. He's a hologram. He's Tupac. And man, that moment where he was about to get killed by the cops, I was like, please don't let it be the cops. And then this idiot just kills himself.
He was just born yesterday.
And I was like, wait a minute. If he's a hologram, he should have been like, hey, I'm a hologram. Disappear. And he didn't do that.
No, I don't feel like he was really a hologram, you guys.
No, I was about to say that too. It's just like maybe that's what they call people of color who clearly only work in entertainment. Another word for actor.
No, I mean that is true because
like in the
holograms, when Robert Duvall is watching the TV because it's television, weren't all of them or the majority of them people of color actually?
Yeah, the only people who weren't people of color were newscasters.
Yeah, and
So
so
people who
I did notice the two like black comedians doing their bits
Yeah.
with each other. I didn't. I
Mhm.
guess I didn't pay enough attention to the other ones, but yeah, that seemed like the only program he was watching that wasn't like the news or information.
Well,
And
Just-
then
Well,
yeah,
there
really
was
into
only
just
there was only Space BET.
right.
well,
That's
World
crazy.
Star. 'Cause then he's just watching video of someone getting beat over and over, and
Yeah.
which is something that people do, right? That's
Mhm.
UFC. That's just YouTube videos, viral videos of people just getting the shit beat out of them, right?
Yeah, no, and I'm pretty sure, and yeah, no, like I think, or at least that was my theory. Was like
No,
that's
like,
what they call people.
That's so fucking interesting because like now I want to know like his like if that's true. I want to know that story because you know in his mind he believes that the entertainment that he gives to the other masses because it's entertainment, he probably feels he's not real, and it makes sense. Like oh, I'm not real. I want to go experience real things, and when he leaves, he assumes, oh, I guess this is real now. So that's nuts. I always assumed that since they never said like, oh yeah, I guess he was a hologram and somehow fucking space jammed his way out of there. But nah, what you said I think makes not only more sense, but I think is more interesting. Because that shows like there's different
Right.
sections of how they
Projected
treat
the
the fucking
hologram.
people. Yeah.
And I think that the void is just where they put problem people because it's enough space for you to like the fact that it's all white means that it's deprivating. So that means that like you either lose your mind, you cool the fuck down, and it actually gives you space to like rent out energy. Like it's a huge space. That's
I got great Moliere vibes from that scene.
yeah. No, like I feel like this is just a space that they're able to put like problem people, and then they just put cots in certain areas, and they just let people go because I mean they don't have to do anything. The space itself will do it.
Which is probably why like they stay in that one spot. And I'm assuming the old guy was probably there the longest for sure. Because not only that, like he was the one that kind of, this is gonna sound weird, but he spoke the most normal.
Yeah.
Get that?
Yeah.
Like he actually spoke like very, very fluent, very like, okay, this guy obviously knows what he's saying. He's a man of, you know, at least enough words to like, okay, I get it. And he's much more eloquent. He has a bigger vocabulary than the other characters. So I'm guessing like maybe he was a problem because of that. And maybe back when he was younger, more people knew the English language, or at least knew more of it compared to Robert Duvall and the younger folks, who, because of the drugs and because of how they run things, English speak but not good.
Yeah, well, he was probably phased out. Like they probably never had someone live as long as he had.
Yeah.
Because like they clearly like have high numbers of people dying every day, and when they switch shifts, that means that everyone, even if they're not qualified or not good at a job, is going to end up doing it eventually. And so he's probably like I mean it's what happens. Like they cut off the fat. You know? Like we were just kind of having a discussion about this earlier.
You are fat.
No, because like we were literally just talking about like this whole idea, like with the action figure thing. It's the same concept.
Action figure?
Yeah. Before in the pre-chat, Chris and Des were kind of duking it out. About like because like there's this app now that you can get a fake action figure, and Chris was saying how dumb it was because like you'd rather have the solid thing, but all the kids really like it and are spending lots of money on it. It's the same principle.
I got you. It is the same principle. Yeah.
So final characters that I want to mention, just to see if we were all watching the same version. So there's little people playing dirty, outsiders, basically, right? Because had hair and everything. And then when Duvall, THX, is like finally kind of getting away, he gets jumped by these ridiculous CGI monkey people. Did you guys see that ridiculous CGI monkey people?
Yep.
Is that supposed to be the little people? But then they were like, yeah, that would be looking bad. So let me then go and make CGI monkey people to edit and swap out what I had before.
That's what it looks like.
Is that just me, or is that what you guys saw?
It looked like they shot like an entirely different scene because you didn't see Robert Duvall's face.
Yeah.
It was like a body double.
Yeah. Which I think came later, you know. I think that was part of the adding on the edit.
Well, it was definitely added on because he's got these CGI things all over his body, so they didn't have that in the original.
No.
So it's an added scene, and I was just trying to wonder to like what effect. What's the point? Was it to add?
Well, you know, it's another evidence of the nuclear wasteland.
Yeah. I bet if this scene was in the original, I bet because the party was wondering like what was there before. Was it little people or was it puppets? And to be quite honest, the reason why.
Who's that?
We're gonna get blacked by fucking Barnum. Sorry, for some reason my brain went somewhere else. What was I saying?
I don't know.
Fuck, I don't know. Oh yeah, if they were, I was gonna say it's strictly unpolitical, nothing of that sort. Lucas obviously hated, if the scene was there in the original, which I don't know, Lucas obviously hated the practicality of that scene. He probably hated that it looked hokey, and so he decided we're gonna add some little fucking CGI gremlins instead. That was his call. It had nothing to do with, oh, this is probably gonna be disparaging for little people, oh, whatever. No, I bet that was the reason. He hated how it looked like. That's not how he envisioned it. And now that he can make CGI little gremlins in his backyard, he can do it.
You know what? I bet there's a YouTube video explaining what's going on. I just know it. Okay, you guys, listen. We can talk about this movie forever, but we're not going to.
That's like the movie itself.
Hey.
So there is one more element that I want to talk about because we didn't really get into it very big before we close this thing out. Was the sound. Now we listened to it with a bass subwoofer like behind us, and I started noticing as we're watching the movie like the sound was giving out this weird frequency. And then I remember like the THX sound was something new that had been developed, and then it was like installed in all these movie theaters like after this movie came out. Like George Lucas created his own sound system for cinema, right? Am I wrong about that?
You're right.
He named it THX. And there is a certain sound quality that's happening in this movie that you don't get in very many movies even still today. There's absolutely like a resonance or a frequency to what's being played behind us audibly. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah, I noticed the fart sounds for sure.
Oh my God. I'll say I did, and it was at times very nauseating because, like, I get that's the vibe that the movie is giving, like these very electric white noises that like you're wondering like where is that coming from? Why is it like kind of like how a hospital? I got hospital vibes a lot from this film. And
right? It's just like all these sounds kind of just you know, it's
like, a lot of ambient noises and whatnot.
I just wish that there was. I know that it was probably an artistic choice, which is why they didn't go with it. I just wish there was a score, or at least a very nice score, or a better score, because the music in this film I thought was not only limiting but really forgetful, and I'm betting that was probably a choice.
He definitely slipped in stuff later.
Yeah,
that were very. But that's because he hadn't met John Williams yet.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
Although this composer has done other big things.
I did like the music that I actually heard in this film.
Yeah, no,
And
there's like snippets of good stuff in there. It's just it's very
Yeah,
hard in between.
it's
It's not used wisely.
It's composed by Lalo Schifrin, and he's also composed for some Mission Impossible movies. Has orchestrated for Rush Hour movies. Did a song for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or they used So he's
this guy's a full-on G, but there's also a sensory element to watching this movie as an audience member. And I couldn't help but think, like, man, this thing would play so much differently, like in a big theater with this big white, stuff going on, and sometimes it's being very quiet, and sometimes it's being very loud, and there's a lot happening on a sensory level, like auditory and like visually. What were you guys? Did you guys like have any experiences with that, like as you watched it?
Oh yeah, no, like I honestly like that's part of why I didn't really enjoy this film, because like I feel like if we watched it on any bigger screen, my stomach probably would have gotten upset.
Yeah, I can see that.
And like now that you say that, that totally makes sense why I had a hard time just like focusing and dialing in, because like I feel like that's what it was. It's just like they're very good at like taking away everything and then putting back everything to the point where you don't even know what you're supposed to be looking at.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Like, you can feel any way you want about the movie, but there's a lot going on here, man. There's really some mastery filmmaking work from a very young filmmaker.
Well, college grad.
I wouldn't say mastery. Like I think it's definitely a case of no. And I don't mean this in a disparaging way. This is his first like big feature film, and there's a lot of rookie mistakes, but it shows that he clearly had a vision. Well, y'all can hate all you want, but it's true. Like,
no, listen, I appreciate your opinion. We're just getting opinions here anyhow, and I agree with you on that too. There are some rookie mistakes for sure.
Well, and I mean, even the subject matter, you can tell that he's trying to cram as many great ideas as he can into this film. And that's part of why it's a little disjointed. But like that's part of why it's very interesting to watch, because like you can tell that this was his passion project when he was in school, and then he went on to the next level with it.
Now, how was this? Does anybody know how this thing got released? Was this actually like a theatrical release, or what was the situation with this thing? I mean, Robert Duvall's in it, for Pete's sakes.
Yeah.
But Francis Ford Coppola produced it.
Yeah.
I just don't remember. I don't ever remember anyone in my life saying, "Hey, man, you got to check out THX 1138," or like no one ever. It never comes up like as a thing that you should experience. Like, it's been repackaged and resold to us, but no one ever talks about it really. I find that a little weird.
About this movie, you mean?
Yeah, about this movie specifically.
Well, I guess so. Like Michaela said, I guess because it is so rough, if you think about it. I think there is the mastery or whatever you were saying, and there is the Michaela of, like, there's very much, like, clearly there's some good swings and some good misses, right?
Well, I'm not saying it's not genius. I'm just saying that, like, the genius behind it, he just didn't have the skills to execute it.
Yes,
right.
His brushstroke wasn't refined yet, but it was all there. It was all in his. He had the idea in his head. He just didn't have the mastery to stroke it.
But then when he had the brushes, he decided to go back and fuck with it.
Yeah,
instead of just let it be. Because I feel like it might be different if we were to see this without the little CGI that was added later and whatever else was added, and be more in awe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe.
And so this was my other question that I was thinking, is the Buck Rogers just him kind of like, this is what our parents thought the future was gonna be, and this is what our future is gonna be?
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what I think it was.
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of it. Still don't, but that's plausible. Why don't we get into our final thoughts on the film, you guys? Um, First one to speak is the goal.
I'll go ahead then.
Thank you, William.
It's definitely a film that I would not suggest for anyone to like really watch unless I know that they're really into cinema history. Because it's a hard watch. Like JP was constantly saying, it feels long, and it's actually only like an hour and some change.
Yeah.
You know, but like I said, it's one of those things where you really get to. It's one of those few films that you get to see someone with such big ideas try to accomplish it with what they've got, and that's what this film is.
Yeah.
And you know, like if you're someone who is in any kind of creative field, I think it is important to like actually look at stuff at different stages of the process. You know, we don't all like you don't start off like this great, like there's a process to it, and I feel like that's what makes this film interesting is you see that process being taken care of. You see the growth in it, knowing like where he ended up.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's my opinion.
That's dope. Steve, we want to know your final thought.
What?
We want to know your final thought.
I didn't hear you.
Final thoughts, Steve.
Oh, final thoughts.
Let me stop you.
I don't know. It was cutting off. I think you're a hologram. So final thoughts is that this movie is an interesting journey. It's definitely one that at least I don't know. I've never ever crossed my mind. It's not really the most memorable name necessarily. So it's like, you know, it will be like in the weeds if you haven't heard of this movie or you're not like a George Lucas fan or something like that. So definitely, if you haven't seen it, get a watch to it. Compare this movie. I would say if watch this movie, watch They Live, watch Free Guy, watch those movies because they all have like some type of messaging connected to each of them that you can like puzzle together. Um, yeah, it's an interesting movie. Definitely, I wouldn't watch it if I was a kid, but apparently in Paraguay they just let the kids do whatever they want. So
You're not wrong.
That's what
You're not wrong.
I guess so. But yeah, final thoughts. Interesting movie. Would I watch it again? Maybe in a very future time, but not anytime soon. So thumbs up.
Awesome. Great takes. Dino, how about you, sir?
See, I definitely got more of this film this time than I guess clearly when I was a kid and I watched it. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I was 14 maybe when I saw it, maybe even a little younger, you know. Um, so yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. I mean, I wouldn't really recommend this to anyone unless they really is like a George Lucas fan or just really into sci-fi stuff like Blade Runner, if that whole period of just types of films. I'm like, well, you might want to watch this, right? It is something that gets Easter egged a lot, especially in all the different Star Wars films, and especially in the new ones and stuff like that, and just like other sci-fi things. People always like to do like room numbers and stuff like that, or things are being THX 1138 or Sen or so they clearly, the people that are making films that have to do with sci-fi and all that do kind of have certain references that go back to this film. But yeah, it is one of those where, I mean, I might watch it again, but it's probably going to be another 15, 20 years from now. And hopefully George hasn't added more to it. I think he's slowed down and isn't touching his shit anymore because he sold it all off, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, c'est la vie. Yeah, the movie would be even shorter if he didn't add a second here, 2 seconds there, 3 seconds there of just like, look at this nuclear vial melting through everything, but clearly this is computer generated, but the rest of the film is analog. So I don't know. Yeah, but I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it. It is what it is.
Cool. How about you, Mr. Isaac?
Isaac.
Well, I really enjoyed the movie, and this time around it spoke to me a lot more than the other time I saw it, because recently I left my job in the mental health field. So quickly, I worked in a transitioning home where people that were released from mental hospitals went to, I guess, redevelop their skills and behavioral patterns, and we were supposed to work with them on behavioral techniques instead of drugging them up because I was killing them. So we had a lot of people that were they had a lot of health problems because of their drugs that were sedating them, which is a lot similar to what we see in the movie. And also, like, my coworkers were like zombied out, and they didn't challenge like what was going on or how we were doing things. They just like that's why I just couldn't take it anymore. And it was all experimental. It's pretty much like a research lab, and the patients are just mice running around, and the doctors are just trying to find what fits and what sticks to the wall. And much like this movie, I mean, it's just like everything was white in the facility, and like, I guess I resonate with Robert Duvall's character and finally leaving that feudal world, and like, I got everything. I got like the police with no expressions or face that are just programmed to do a job, and that's what I was there to do. We weren't supposed to question how the treatment was working. We were just supposed to enter data and let the professionals deal with it. And falsifying documents, it's just, so this movie like really spoke to me in that way, which had I not gone through that experience, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. But if I don't recommend it to like people that like big action Star Wars movies. It's not that accessible, but for people that want to explore like society and how it serves as puppet masters, I think it'd be interesting and it'd be fun. And also visually, it's beautiful. I actually think it's a lot more beautiful than the prequels. So like on that level, yes. I mean, if you restore the film and you watch it on the best possible platform, it's just, I think it's a lot more beautiful. But that's my take. It was really enjoyable. I give it an A- for those who enjoy that thing, but a D- for those who just won't like it.
Wow. Yeah, I think those are pretty accurate takes, and it's a good reminder as well, and Dino sort of mentioned it, that, depending on where you're at when you watch a movie, man, it can make a huge difference in your viewing experience. That's a wonderful thing about art,
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, by the way, Isaac. I had no idea you had that job. So that's really, really cool and interesting to learn about you.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's why we do it, folks. That's why we do it. JP, bless us with a final thought.
Okay, so I think after this discussion, this is great that we have these discussions. I'm starting to get the idea that, THX existed to walk so that other films afterwards can run. Because, I feel like there's other movies, later down the road that have the same story, the same premise as this, but just did it a lot better or was just executed much more clearly. And probably because they had the better backing from their studios or there was more money involved or they just had more time. Because I don't know the history of this film. I don't know if Lucas was limited by Warner Brothers on what he could do or what ideas that he and Francis had. Because I know that, collaborations, like it's a team effort. And sometimes your vision doesn't get 100% all the way because you have to make compromises in the end. But all in all, like this, I still feel like this film runs very slow. It's would I recommend it? I'm gonna probably lean it like what Isaac said. Definitely not for everyone, and I don't know if I could recommend it to most folks. But if you do watch it, I do believe you're going to watch this one with at least a group of folks, kind of like how we did it. Because I think if you watch it on your own, you're probably gonna go a little mental, just like the characters in this film. But like when you get to discuss like your theories and your mind and your kind of like visions of how you saw the film, and then like you group discussion and talk about it, it becomes much more clear. Because I know there was a lot of things that I'm not gonna lie, throughout this film, I was basically on autopilot. So I didn't think that much while watching the movie. And so you guys kind of did most of the thing for me during this discussion. Because I was a lot of times zoned out, or just straight up confused about what was going on. But a lot of you guys saw the bigger picture. And I kind of said that in the beginning where a smarter me might have gotten it. But so would I recommend it? Not really. But if you do, watch it with a friend. And you might want to give this one at least 2 watches. I thought about giving this a second watch. I wasn't able to because of time constraints. But I kind of wish that I did. Because I know that I probably would have gotten a better understanding the second time around. Since I would have, at least a preconceived notion of what I'm getting myself into. Also, if you can, get the one that Jason saw, not the weird CGI monkeys. Like
we got the same one.
You guys got the same one? Never mind.
Yeah.
That film is. If you have a Laserdisc copy of this, I guess watch that. That's probably the only way you're gonna watch it.
Yeah, let's bring back Laserdiscs. Let's make it the vinyl revolution, the Laserdisc revolution.
I would love to go back and just at least see the scenes of the differences between what scenes were in and out and whatnot. This is a movie, so you guys had a lot of great points tonight. I agree with most of them. So you guys actually made my little final thought a lot easier because I'm not going to reiterate everything you guys said. But
can I just
really quick. No.
I recommend it to people that are really into dystopian movies.
I would agree with that. So I think for me, this is one of those films that I know that I'm going to want to watch again in the future sometime. So I agree with some of you guys on that. I'm going to want to revisit it at some point. No time soon necessarily, but there will come a time where I'm going to probably rethink this thing, or it'll play in a movie theater somewhere, and it'll be some late night, and somebody will say, "Hey Jay, you want to go see this thing?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, why not?" And then I'll go. And then maybe or maybe not fall asleep while I watch it. Who knows? There's a lot to like about this movie. I think Michaela hit the nail on the head when she said that, but there's still some amateurish stuff in there, or at least, amateurish for a dude who's going to become a master at his work, right?
And amateurish for where we are today in film and our understanding of what can be done and can
be. Yeah. I mean, but I meant more along the lines of some of the storytelling elements. Right.
Got it.
Yeah. But I mean, this thing is an OG. So many movies came from this. So many things were inspired by this. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of like raw, like dystopian movies that existed before this in the sci-fi era. You know what I mean? Very few. And once this thing opened up, I feel like there's probably a ton of literature and movies and people realizing what could be made, and that's why we have so many today. So grateful for that. Would I recommend this movie to anyone? And the answer is very similar to you guys. if they're cinephiles, if they're movie lovers, if they're into dystopian storytelling, that's about it. I think for the general public, I don't think they would like this movie, and I think that's probably the reason why this thing has kind of like just stayed in the stacks for so long, and like most people have never watched it or never even will hear of it. You got to be into movies, you got to be a film student, or you got to be into dystopia or sci-fi, to really appreciate this thing. I think in its full capacity. That's all I got to say about the movie. I did like it myself. A lot to be gleaned from it, a lot to be learned from it. But what I want to know is I have a question for Steve. What do you have for us next week?
Next week, why are you asking me if it's not my turn? It is Isaac's turn. So Isaac, what is your next movie? But it can't be any movie. It has to be someone that worked directly in this film that we just watched, whether it's behind the scenes, in front of the camera, and they have to be connected to this next movie pick. So do you have a movie pick for us next week?
I do. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. One of my favorites. I loved it as a kid. I still do. And the puppet master for this movie worked on Raiders of the Lost Ark. Ted Monike. I can't pronounce his last name, but yeah, I like the special effects, and obviously Raiders was a monumental film, so I think it'll be interesting.
Interesting. You went with the. What?
I was gonna say George is probably in the corner thing. Like, that's a weird way to pronounce my name.
Yeah, you went with the puppet master, not just that George also produced that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Like, this has just been such a fun thing for me. Like, the rabbit hole we've gone, like where we've started to where we are now. It's been a journey.
It's a real Kevin Bacon.
We can keep it going. But for Isaac, Michaela, JP, Jason Echols, El Dondino, and me, Steve Des TV, we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm Jason Echols, and thank you for watching the Dimelo Network. There's some videos here. Watch one of them, and then you can subscribe to the network, and you can see more good stuff.